The strange signal came on a Tuesday. Laura Bennett was halfway through her coffee when the monitoring system at Ceres Deep Space Station began to flash. At first, she thought it was just another piece of space junk passing too close to their sensors. After 12 years working as the lead language expert for the United Nations Space Command, Laura had seen plenty of false alarms. But this was different. "Hey, Frank, are you seeing this?" she called to her colleague across the room. Frank. Dawson looked up from his own screen, his eyes widening as he saw the pattern of light pulses streaming across Laura's monitor. "That's not one of ours," he said simply. Within an hour, every scientist on the station was gathered around Laura's workstation. The signal was unlike anything in human records, a complex pattern of light and radio waves that repeated with mathematical precision. "It has to be artificial," said Dr. Alan Morris, the station director. His face looked pale under the harsh lights of the control room. "And it's not coming from Earth or any of our colonies." Laura felt a chill run down her spine. After decades of searching the stars, this was what humanity had been waiting for, proof that we weren't alone. But something about the signal felt wrong. The pattern had an urgency to it, a repetition that reminded Laura of the old SOS signals once used by sailors on Earth's oceans. "I think it's a call for help," she said quietly. The next 72 hours passed in a blur. Laura barely slept, working to decode the alien message while the best minds on Earth and Mars joined her efforts remotely. They used every supercomputer in the solar system to break down the complex patterns. When the first images began to form on her screen, Laura gasped. They showed massive ships, 12 of them, trapped in the gravitational pull of a neutron star. The ships were unlike any human design, with crystalline structures that seemed to grow organically from central cores. But it was the next part of the message that truly shocked everyone. The aliens, who called themselves the Feral, had been watching humanity for over 50 years. They had observed our television broadcasts, our internet, our wars, and our peace treaties. And now, in their darkest hour, they had chosen to call upon humans specifically for help. Not the logical choice. Not the safe choice. But perhaps the only choice that might work. The message was clear. We need your creativity. We need your courage. We need your chaos. President Olivia Carter called an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. For once, the nations of Earth were united in purpose. "If we don't act, an entire species will die," the president said simply. "They've asked for our help. I say we give it to them." The mission was approved within days. The UNSC vessel Horizon, Earth's newest and fastest ship, would make the journey to the Cygnus constellation where the Feral fleet was trapped. The trip would take 3 months using the experimental Alcubierre drive, barely enough time to reach the aliens before their life support systems failed completely. Commander Jack Wilson was in his garden when he got the call. At 45, he had thought his days of dangerous missions were behind him. After the Mars conflicts, he had requested a teaching position at the Space Academy, where he could share his experience without risking his life. "Why me?" he asked Admiral Peterson over the secure line. "Because you think outside the box, Jack. This mission will need that. These aliens, the Feral, they specifically asked for humans because we're unpredictable. Apparently that's a good thing for once." Jack looked at the small vegetable garden he had spent the last year perfecting. He thought about the classes he was scheduled to teach next month. He thought about his quiet life. Then he thought about an entire species counting on human ingenuity to save them. "When do we leave?" he asked. The crew came together quickly. Chief Engineer Sofia Rodriguez was pulled from her research lab at MIT, where she had been developing the next generation of fusion engines. At 36, she was already legendary for solving problems other engineers called impossible. "They want impossible," she said when Jack explained the mission. "I eat impossible for breakfast." Medical Officer Daniel Clark was more hesitant. His specialty was human physiology in extreme environments, not alien biology. "I don't know the first thing about these Feral," he protested. "Neither does anyone else," Jack told him. "But you're the best at figuring out how to keep living things alive in places they shouldn't be. That's what we need." The crew grew. Communications specialist Eric Nguyen, who could pick up patterns in any form of information, Security Officer Ryan Miller, whose calm under pressure had saved lives during the Europa incident, Science Officer Kelly Martinez, whose open mind and sharp intellect had revolutionized xenobiology theory. 14 humans in total. A tiny group against the vastness of space, heading out to save thousands of aliens they had never met. The day before launch, a crowd of nearly 1 million people gathered around the Kennedy Space Center to see the horizon off. The sleek ship gleamed. In the morning sun, its Alcubierre rings dormant but ready to bend space itself for the journey ahead. Jack stood at the boarding ramp with his crew, looking out at the sea of faces. Some held signs, "Humanity answers the call," and "Godspeed to the stars." Children sat on their parents' shoulders, pointing excitedly at the ship that would make history. President Carter approached the crew for a final handshake. "You carry the hopes of Earth with you," she said. "For the first time, we go to the stars not to take but to give, not to conquer but to rescue." As the crew made their final preparations, Laura Bennett joined them on board. As the only human who fully understood the Feral language, she would be essential for the mission. "I've spent my life listening to the stars," she told Jack as they strapped into their acceleration chairs. "I never thought they would answer back." The horizon lifted, off at dawn. As Earth fell away beneath them, Jack looked at his crew, the best humanity had to offer, heading into absolute uncertainty. 3 months to Cygnus, he said over the ship's comm system. "Let's make them count." In the darkness of space, the horizon engaged its Alcubierre drive. Reality warped around the ship, folding space to allow it to travel at speeds once thought impossible. On the bridge, the crew watched as the stars blurred. They were on their way to answer a call from the stars. Not the first humans to leave the solar system, but the first to do so on a mission of mercy. And somewhere in the Cygnus constellation, a dying alien fleet waited, having placed their final hope in the most unpredictable species they had ever encountered. The game of galactic dice had been rolled. Humanity was answering the call. Space bent around the horizon as it traveled faster than any human ship before it. Inside, 14 humans settled into a routine that would carry them across the stars to a meeting that would change history. The journey would take 3 months. 3 months in which the crew would need to learn everything they could about the aliens they were rushing to save. Laura Bennett spent most of her time in the ship's communication center, studying the data package the Feral had sent along with their distress call. Day after day, she pieced together their language, their history, and their current crisis. "They're silicon-based," she explained during the daily briefing 1 week into the journey. "Not carbon-based like us. Their bodies are partly crystalline. They live much longer than humans, up to 300 years. Jack Wilson nodded as he looked at the images Laura had translated. The Feral were beautiful in an alien way. Tall, slender beings with skin that caught the light like polished quartz. They moved with careful, precise steps as if every motion was planned in advance. "And they've been running for a long time," Laura continued. "According to their history, their home system was destroyed by something they call the unmaking. Some kind of spreading quantum event that broke down the laws of physics. Their great-great-grandparents started this journey." Sofia Rodriguez let out a low whistle. "Generation ships. They've been living in space for hundreds of years." The engineer shook her head in wonder. "That takes serious planning." "Planning is what they do best," Laura said. "Everything in their society is ordered, precise, predictable. They value stability above all else, which makes their current situation even worse," Daniel Clark added. "They planned for every possible problem on their journey, except ending up too close to a neutron star. That was a navigation error they never expected to make." Security. Officer Ryan Miller frowned. "So they called us? The most chaotic species they could find because their ordered thinking can't solve this problem?" "Exactly," Laura said. "They need what they call the human spark, the ability to make creative leaps, to try solutions no one has ever thought of before." "No pressure," Jack said with a tight smile. As the weeks passed, The crew trained constantly for their mission. They wore heavy suits to simulate the Farrell's higher gravity. They practiced using tools with crystalline interfaces. They studied the schematics of the Farrell ships, trying to understand technology that had evolved along completely different lines than human engineering. They also began talking directly with the Farrell. The first communication was brief, just a confirmation that help was coming. But as Laura refined her understanding of the Farrell language, the exchanges grew longer. Jack had his first conversation with Shinthal, the elder of the Farrell Council, 60 days into the journey. "We watch your approach with gratitude," the alien's message said. The translation software Laura had built converted Shinthal's light patterns and vibrations into English words. "Your speed exceeds our calculations." "We've pushed our engines beyond normal limits," Jack replied, knowing Laura's software would convert his words into something the Farrell could understand. "How are your people holding up?" There was a long pause before Shinthal's response came. "Through. We are managing. The radiation affects us severely. 2,000 have entered healing stasis. Our ship's outer layers provide some protection, but it diminishes daily." Jack wanted to offer comfort but wasn't sure how. What would comfort mean to a being so different from humans? "We'll be there in 30 days, he said finally, "and we'll find a way to help you." "Your certainty without evidence is most human," Shinthal replied. Jack thought he detected something like puzzled amusement in the alien's words. Meanwhile, Sophia spent every waking hour studying the Farrell propulsion systems. "They're using quantum flux technology that's way beyond what we have," she told Jack one night as they shared a meal in the ship's dining area. "But the principles are sound. I think I understand why they can't escape the neutron star's pull." "Can we fix it?" Jack asked. Sophia rubbed her tired eyes. "Maybe. It would take a complete reconfiguration of their drive parameters. The problem is their systems are designed to run exactly one way, the right way according to their engineering. They don't have our habit of tinkering and improvising." As they neared the Cygnus constellation, Science Officer Kelly Martinez made a disturbing discovery. "We're picking up other ships in the system," she reported. "Smaller vessels, hiding in the outer reaches. They're not Farrell design." Kelly pulled up the scans on the main screen. The mystery ships had a predatory look, all sharp angles and weapon mounts. "Pirates?" Ryan Miller suggested, his hand unconsciously moving to where his sidearm would normally be holstered. "The Farrell message mentioned nothing about other species in the area," Laura said with a frown. Jack sent a tight beam message to Shinthal, asking about the other ships. The response came back quickly. "The Vrex." The alien's words carried a new emotion, something like dread. "Scavengers who follow failing ships waiting to claim technology from the dead. They will not help us, they only wait." "They're vultures," Jack told his crew after sharing the message. "Waiting for the Farrell to die so they can pick their ships clean." Ryan's jaw tightened. "So we've got radiation, a neutron star, failing ships, and hostile aliens. Anything else the universe wants to throw at us?" As if in answer, the ship's sensors began to wail. "Massive energy buildup in the neutron star," Kelly shouted, her fingers flying over her console. "It's going to flare, and soon." Laura's face went pale as she looked at the readouts. The Farrell ships are already in bad shape. If that flare hits them... She didn't need to finish the thought. Jack made a quick decision. "Push the engines harder, we need to reach them before that flare hits." "The drive isn't rated for that kind of stress," Sophia warned. "Neither are the Farrell," Jack replied simply. Sophia nodded and headed to the engine room. Soon the horizon was moving even faster, the space around it bending to the very limits of what physics would allow. "Contact the Farrell," Jack ordered Laura. "Tell them about the flare. See if they have any kind of shielding they can use." Laura sent the message, but the reply was not encouraging. "Our shields were not designed for such an event," Shinthal responded. "We have calculated the outcome. 7 of our 12 ships will lose all power when the flare hits. The remaining 5 will follow within hours." "Ask them if they've tried reconfiguring their shields," Jack said. "Maybe using their communication arrays to boost the coverage?" When Laura translated Shinthal's response, she couldn't keep the frustration from her voice. They say such a reconfiguration has never been tested and is not in their operational parameters. Jack ran a hand through his hair. Tell them to test it now. This is exactly why they called us, to think of things they wouldn't. As the horizon raced toward the doomed fleet, the neutron star's surface churned with increasing energy. The clock was ticking. 23 days into their planned 30-day journey, the human ship finally dropped out of FTL speed at the edge of the Cygnus system. What the crew saw took their breath away. The feral fleet floated like massive crystal sculptures against the darkness of space. 12 enormous ships, each one a city in itself, their surfaces catching the light of distant stars. But behind them loomed the neutron star, a sphere of unimaginable density, already beginning to pulse with the energy of an imminent flare. And in the shadows of the system's outer planet lurked the dark shapes of the Brex vessels, waiting for their chance to claim the remains of a dead civilization. "We made it," Eric Nguyen whispered from his communication station. "Just in time for the hard part," Jack replied, his eyes fixed on the troubled star. "Suit up, everyone. We're about to meet the aliens who crossed the stars to find us." The transport shuttle from the horizon approached the largest feral ship, which Shinthal had identified as the Eternal Harmony. Jack, Laura, Sophia, and Daniel wore special environmental suits designed to protect them in the silicon-rich atmosphere the feral needed to survive. "Remember," Laura said as they prepared to dock, "the feral don't understand humor or sarcasm. They take everything literally." "Great," Jack muttered. "No jokes during first contact with an alien species. That's going to be tough." The shuttle clanked against the feral ship's docking port. After a series of mechanical whirs, the door slid open. Jack took a deep breath inside his helmet and led his team into the alien vessel. The interior of the Eternal Harmony looked nothing like a human ship. The walls curved in organic patterns with light pulsing through crystal veins that ran along every surface. The gravity pulled at them, heavier than Earth normal, making each step an effort. And then they saw the feral. 5 tall beings waited for them in the docking chamber. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies like polished quartz sculptures, with inner light flowing beneath translucent skin. Their faces had no features that humans would recognize as eyes or mouths, just smooth crystalline surfaces that rippled with color. Laura stepped forward and made a series of light patterns. With a device she had built, the patterns flashed in blues and greens across the space between them. The tallest feral responded with its own light pattern, its body glowing from within. "That's Shinthal," Laura whispered to the others. "The Elder. He welcomes us aboard and thanks us for coming to their aid." Jack nodded and Laura translated as he spoke. "We're honored to meet you. We've come to help however we can." The feral's lights flickered rapidly. Laura listened through her translator device. "He says they've studied our approach. We traveled faster than their calculations predicted possible." "He's confused by that." Jack smiled inside his helmet. "Tell him humans have a habit of pushing beyond what's supposed to be possible." When Laura translated this, the feral's lights dimmed for a moment, then flared brightly. The other 4 aliens shifted, their crystalline bodies making soft chiming sounds as they moved. "I think you surprised them," Laura said. Shinthal led them deeper into the ship. The corridors were wide, clearly designed for beings larger than humans. Everywhere they looked, they saw more feral, some healthy and glowing brightly, others dimmer, moving with obvious difficulty. "The radiation is affecting them badly," Daniel said quietly, checking readings on his medical scanner. "Their crystalline structures are breaking down on a molecular level." They reached what appeared to be a control center. A massive window showed the neutron star and the other 11 feral ships floating in formation. "Ask them to show us their propulsion systems," Sophia said. "I need to see what we're working with," Laura translated, and Shinthal led them to another section of the ship. The engine room was a cathedral of crystal and light, with a central core that pulsed with blue-white energy. Sophia approached one of the control panels, her eyes wide with wonder behind her helmet visor. "This is incredible. They're using quantum principles we've only theorized about. Laura spoke with several feral engineers, their light patterns becoming increasingly complex as they delved into technical details. They say the quantum flux drives were working perfectly until they encountered the neutron star's gravity field, Laura explained. Now the field equations are all wrong, and they can't generate enough power to escape. Sophia frowned as she studied the readouts. That makes sense. Their drives work on precise mathematical parameters. The neutron star's gravity is so intense it's changing the quantum state of particles in the drive itself. She looked up at Jack. The good news is the drives aren't broken. They just need to be recalibrated for the new environment. Can we do that? Jack asked. We can try, but it would mean changing their entire operating system. Sophia glanced at the feral engineers. We need to ask if they're okay with us making changes to their sacred technology. When Laura translated this question, the response was immediate and alarming. The feral engineers' lights flashed in rapid patterns that even the humans could tell meant distress. They're saying it's impossible, Laura said. The drives were built to exact specifications handed down for generations. Changing them would go against everything they believe about proper engineering. Jack felt frustration building. Tell them we didn't come all this way to tell them what they already know. We came to try something new. Before Laura could translate, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Shinthal's body flashed with urgent patterns. The neutron star, Laura translated quickly. The flare is building faster than predicted. We have less than 12 hours. Jack nodded grimly. Then we need to work fast. Laura explained to Shinthal that we need to bring more of our crew aboard. Sophia, start figuring out how to recalibrate those drives. Daniel, see what you can do for the feral who are suffering from radiation effects. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Jack received an urgent call from Ryan on the horizon. Commander, the V-Rex are on the move. 3 of their ships have broken formation and are heading toward the outer feral vessels, Jack cursed under his breath. They think the flare will finish off the feral, and they're moving in to claim the prize early. He turned to Shinthal. We have another problem. The Vrex are approaching your fleet. Do you have any defenses? When Laura translated, Shinthal's response was slow and heavy. The feral are not warriors. Their ships have basic shields but no weapons. They've always relied on diplomacy and careful navigation to avoid threats. That won't work with the Vrex, Jack said. Ryan, prepare a defense team. We need to protect the outer feral ships until we can get them moving. Over the next few hours, the human crew worked frantically on multiple fronts. Sophia and a team of engineers began the delicate work of reconfiguring the feral drives, fighting against both time and the aliens' deep reluctance to change their systems. It's like trying to convince them to rewrite their religion, Sophia complained to Jack during a brief break. They've done things the same way for so long they can't imagine any other approach. Meanwhile, Daniel discovered something about the feral biology that offered a glimmer of hope. Their crystalline structures can actually repair themselves if given the right energy frequency, he explained. I've modified our medical equipment to emit that frequency. It won't cure them, but it might buy them some time. On the outer edges of the fleet, Ryan and a team of security personnel used the Horizon's shuttles to create a defensive perimeter. The V-Rex ships prowled just beyond, occasionally testing the humans' resolve with brief probing advances. They're waiting for us to give up, Ryan reported. They don't understand why we're helping the feral at all. As the hours ticked by, Jack called his team leaders together on the Eternal Harmony's bridge. Status reports, he said simply. Sophia went first. We've managed to recalibrate one drive on this ship, but it won't be enough. We need to change all the drives on all 12 ships, and the feral engineers are still resistant. The medical treatments are helping, Daniel added. But we've got thousands of feral in critical condition. We can't treat them all in time. And the Vrex are getting bolder, Ryan finished. They've boarded one of the outer ships. We're fighting them off, but they have superior numbers. Jack looked out at the neutron star. Its surface was roiling now, energy building visibly toward the coming flare. We need something game-changing, he said. Something the feral would never think of and the Vrex wouldn't expect. Laura, who had been quietly consulting with Shinthal, suddenly looked up. I think I know what that might be. All eyes turned to her. Shinthal just told me something they've kept secret from us. The reason they called humans specifically. Laura's voice was filled with wonder. They have an ancient prophecy from the early days of their exodus. It speaks of chaos bringers with ephemeral forms who would turn destruction into salvation. Chaos bringers. That's flattering, Jack said with a wry smile. But it fits, Laura insisted. They've been searching for a species that matches this description for centuries. When they observed Earth and saw how we thrive on change and adaptation, they believed we were the ones. Jack considered this for a moment. Then he turned to look at the neutron star again, its surface now writhing. With energy. Turn destruction into salvation, he repeated softly. Then his eyes widened. That's it. The others looked at him in confusion. We've been trying to escape the neutron star's energy, Jack said, excitement growing in his voice. What if instead, we use it? Sophia caught on first, her exhausted face suddenly animated. The flare. If we could somehow channel that energy. To power the jump, Jack finished. One massive surge to push all 12 ships out of the gravity well at once. That's insane, Ryan said. The flare would fry any ship caught in it. Not if we position them correctly, Sophia countered, already running calculations on her device. The feral ships have those incredible crystalline hulls. If we arrange them in the right formation, we could create a refraction pattern that channels the energy directly into the drives. It would mean completely rebuilding their navigation systems, Laura warned. The feral would never consider such a radical approach. Time was running out. The neutron star pulsed with growing energy, its surface a churning mass of power that would soon erupt in a flare large enough to destroy the weakened feral fleet. The wreck ships circled like hungry wolves, growing bolder with each passing hour. In the center of this chaos, humans and feral worked together in a desperate race against time. Sophia had taken over a large chamber on the Eternal Harmony, turning it into an improvised command center. Screens and holographic displays showed the position of each feral ship, the approaching Vrex vessels, and most importantly, the constantly updated calculations for their daring plan. If we position the ships in this formation, she explained to a group of hesitant feral engineers, we can create a cascading energy transfer. When the flare hits the first ship, its crystal hull will redirect the energy to the second ship, and so on, with each ship adding its own power to the surge. The feral engineers' lights pulsed with doubt. One of them responded, and Laura translated. He says the precision required is beyond their navigation capabilities. The ships would need to be positioned within meters of each other, something they've never attempted. Then we'll have to guide them manually, Jack said. He turned to Eric Nguyen. Can we set up a coordination system between all 12 ships? Eric nodded. I've been working on it. We can use the Horizons communication array to link all the ships together, but we'll need pilots on each vessel. We don't have enough crew for that, Ryan pointed out. Then we'll have to teach the feral, Jack decided. Their ships are designed for automated flight patterns, but they must have manual controls for emergencies. When Laura translated this idea, the feral engineers' lights flickered rapidly in what the humans had come to recognize as their version of alarm. They're saying the manual controls haven't been used in generations, Laura explained. No living feral has ever piloted a ship by hand. Well, they're about to learn, Jack said firmly. We have less than 6 hours before that flare hits. While Jack organized the piloting teams, Daniel worked with a group of feral healers, using his modified medical equipment to treat as many radiation-affected feral as possible. Their biology is fascinating, he told a young feral assistant whose name translated roughly as Clear Song. Their crystalline structures absorb and channel energy almost like living batteries. Clear Song's lights pulsed softly as she helped Daniel adjust his equipment. Laura had taught the medical team basic translation phrases, enough for them to work together. Your people. So different, Clear Song managed in halting human speech. Always changing, always trying new things. Daniel smiled behind his helmet. That's what makes us human. We adapt or we die. Clear Song's lights brightened. Adapt or die. Yes. Now Feral must learn this too. On the outer edges of the fleet, the situation was growing dire. The Vrex had boarded 2 more feral ships and were fighting their way toward the control centers. Ryan and his security team moved from ship to ship, teaching the peaceful feral basic defensive tactics. "Keep your corridors blocked," Ryan instructed, a group of nervous feral. "Use your own crystalline technology against them. The Vrex want your ships intact, you don't have to be." The feral, creatures of order and peace, were reluctant warriors. But with their entire species at risk, they began to fight back with a determination that surprised the humans. 5 hours before the predicted flare, Jack called all team leaders to report. "The drive recalibrations are proceeding," Sophia said, her voice tired but determined. "We've modified 3 ships completely and the others are in progress, but we're cutting it close. The defensive teams are holding the Vrex at bay," Ryan reported. "But they're getting more aggressive. They know something big is happening." "Medical situation?" Jack asked. "We've treated about 30% of the critical cases," Daniel responded. "It's not enough, but it will have to do. The rest are in stasis pods. If we succeed, they can be revived later." Jack nodded and turned to Eric. "Communications? The coordination system is online. We have human feral pilot teams ready on each ship." "But Jack..." Eric hesitated. "The precision timing required is almost impossible. If any ship is out of position, when the flare hits, the energy cascade will fail. Then we don't let that happen," Jack said simply. He turned to Laura. "How's Shinthal?" Laura's expression was troubled. "Struggling. The radiation is affecting him severely, but he refuses treatment until others are helped first." Jack's jaw tightened. "Bring him here. I want him to see what we're doing." When Jinthal arrived at the command center, his once bright form was noticeably dimmer. His movements were slow, the light patterns across his surface irregular. Through Laura, Jack explained the final details of their plan. When the flare hits, all 12 ships must be in perfect formation. The energy will cascade through the fleet, charging each drive beyond its normal capacity. For a few seconds, you'll have enough power to break free of the neutron star's gravity. "And if one ship fails?" Shinthal asked. Jack met the alien's gaze steadily. "Then we all fail. This only works if we work together. Human precision and feral technology in perfect harmony." Shinthal was silent for a long moment. Then his body brightened slightly. "In all our history, we have valued certainty above all else. Now we must embrace uncertainty to survive." His lights pulsed in a pattern Laura had never seen before. "This is most uncomfortable." Despite everything, Jack laughed. "Welcome to being human, Shinthal. Uncomfortable is our natural state." With just 2 hours remaining, the 12 feral ships began moving into their final positions. Each massive vessel was guided by a human feral team, the humans providing the intuitive piloting skill, the feral their intimate knowledge of their own ship's systems. On the Eternal Harmony, Jack watched as the formation took shape. The 12 crystal ships arranged themselves in a spiral pattern, each one precisely placed to catch and redirect the coming flare's energy. "The Vrex are pulling back," Ryan reported suddenly. "They've disengaged from all feral ships and are retreating to the outer system." "They know something's coming," Jack said grimly. "They're smart enough to get out of the way." As the final preparations were made, Sophia approached Jack with a serious expression. "There's something I haven't told you. The horizon can't be part of the formation. Its hull isn't crystalline like the feral ships. But someone needs to stay behind to coordinate the energy cascade." Jack understood immediately. "The horizon will be directly in the path of the flare." Sophia nodded. "Its shields weren't designed for this kind of energy. We'll have about 2 minutes after the cascade begins to get clear before our systems overload." "That's cutting it close." "It's the best I can do." Jack put a hand on her shoulder. "Then that's what we'll work with. Start evacuating non-essential crew to the feral ships. I want as few people at risk as possible." With 30 minutes remaining, Jack addressed the combined human feral teams across all ships. Laura translated his words into the feral light language, the patterns broadcasting across the fleet. "We come from different worlds and different traditions," Jack said. "The Feral value order and certainty. Humans embrace chaos and change. Today, we need both approaches, the precision of Feral technology and the adaptability of human thinking." Across the fleet, both species watched and listened. When that flare hits, each ship must channel the energy perfectly to the next, like passing a flame from one torch to another, growing stronger each time. This has never been done before, but today, we make history together. The final minutes ticked away. On the bridge of the horizon, Jack, Sophia, and a skeleton crew made their final preparations. The rest of the human crew had been distributed across the feral fleet, each person where they could do the most good. "Flare building to critical levels," Eric reported, his eyes fixed on the sensors. "Estimated eruption in 3, 2, 1. The surface of the neutron star seemed to pause for an instant. Then it erupted with blinding fury, a wall of energy racing toward the waiting fleet. "Hold position," Jack ordered through the fleet-wide channel. "Everyone hold until my mark." The flare struck the first feral ship. For a terrifying moment, the massive vessel shuddered under the impact. Then its crystalline hull began to glow, the energy flowing through pathways Sophia had designed, focusing toward the next ship in line. "It's working," Sophia shouted over the roar of energy that seemed to fill the very fabric of space around them. The second ship caught the energy beam, added its own power, and redirected it to the third. The cascade had begun. On the horizon, alarms screamed as the ship's systems began to overload from the nearby energy surge. "Shields failing," Eric called out. "Power fluctuations throughout the ship." Jack watched as the energy passed from ship to ship, each vessel lighting up like a star as the power surged through it. The 12 feral ships were now linked by beams of energy, forming a wheel of light with the neutron star's flare as its hub. Then, as the final ship received the energy, something remarkable happened. All 12 vessels pulsed in unison, their quantum flux drives drawing in the channeled power. "Now," Jack ordered. "Full power to drives. Break orbit." The feral fleet began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. The energy of the neutron star itself pushed them forward, their drives fueled by the very force that had trapped them. The eternal harmony moved with surprising grace for such a massive vessel. Its crystalline hull still glowed with energy from the neutron star's flare as it turned back toward the failing human ship. Inside the horizon, emergency lights cast a red glow over the bridge. Systems failed one by one as the ship's structure began to break down under the strain of the nearby neutron star. "Hull integrity at 30%, Eric reported, his voice steady despite the danger. "Life support, failing." Jack watched through the view screen as the feral ship approached. "They're risking everything to come back for us. Looks like we taught them well," Sophia said with a tired smile. The energy tether from the eternal harmony reached out, wrapping around the horizon like a lifeline. The human crew felt their ship shudder, then begin to move as the feral vessel pulled them away from the neutron star's deadly pull. "They're using the remaining flare energy to boost both ships," Sophia said, checking her failing instruments. "It's brilliant engineering." "Brilliant human engineering," Jack corrected her. "Your design." As the joined ships accelerated away from the neutron star, the rest of the feral fleet adjusted their course to match. Once again, all 12 crystal vessels moved in perfect formation, but this time with the horizon at their center, protected by their combined energy fields. The neutron star faded behind them, its deadly flare now just a distant glow. Ahead lay open space and safety. When the immediate danger had passed, Shinthal requested permission to come aboard the damaged horizon. Despite the ship's compromised state, Jack welcomed the feral elder. Laura stood beside Jack, ready to translate. Shinthal's crystalline form seemed brighter now, the harmful radiation effects already beginning to fade as they moved farther from the neutron star. The alien's light patterns were complex and beautiful as he addressed the human commander. "Elder Shinthal says that in their entire history, No feral has ever witnessed such a display of. The closest translation would be adaptive courage, Laura explained. They're still trying to understand why you were willing to sacrifice yourselves. For a species you had just met. Jack considered his words carefully. Tell him it's what humans do. We couldn't stand by and watch an entire civilization die, not when we had a chance to help. It's our nature. When Laura translated, Shinthal's lights pulsed in what the humans had come to recognize as their version of deep emotion. The elder moved closer to Jack, raising one crystalline hand in an unmistakable offer of greeting. Jack removed his helmet. The ship's air was thin but breathable, and reached out to touch the alien's hand. A small spark passed between them, and Jack felt a strange warmth spread up his arm. He's sharing energy with you, Laura said, wonder in her voice. It's their highest form of gratitude. Tell him the feeling is mutual, Jack replied. The journey back to Earth would take 4 months. The feral fleet, with the damaged horizon in tow, traveled slower than their original journey. The human crew spread themselves among the alien vessels, working side by side with the feral to repair systems and treat the injured of both species. Daniel made a breakthrough in treating the feral's radiation sickness, discovering that human blood cells modified with feral crystal compounds could help speed their healing. Many humans, including Jack, volunteered for the procedure. Our cells adapt quickly, Daniel explained to Clearsong as they worked together in the medical bay. Just like we do. Clearsong's lights pulsed with curiosity. Your bodies change to meet challenges. Your minds change to solve problems, yet you remain human. Daniel smiled. That's what makes us who we are. Change is our constant. The feral, too, were changing. Under Sophia's guidance, they began to understand the value of improvisation in engineering. Ryan taught them simple defensive tactics that would help them protect themselves in the future. And Eric worked with their communication specialists to create a new system that combined feral precision with human creativity. 2 months into their journey home, the Feral Council gathered the human crew for a formal ceremony. The great chamber on the Eternal Harmony was filled with light and sound as hundreds of feral assembled. Their bodies created a living light show that took the humans' breath away. Shinthal stood at the center, his form now fully restored to health. Through Laura he addressed the humans. For 1,000 years we have traveled the stars carrying the last remnants of our civilization. We survived because we planned for every possibility, except the one that nearly destroyed us. The chamber, filled with harmonic tones as the gathered feral vibrated in agreement. The humans taught us that sometimes the greatest strength lies in abandoning the plan, in embracing chaos when order fails. This lesson has saved not just our bodies but our culture. Shinthal's form brightened until he was almost too brilliant to look at directly. Therefore, we extend to humanity our highest honor. We ask to share our journey with you, to learn from you as you learn from us. Together we will be stronger than either could be alone. Jack stepped forward. Though he had no official authority to speak for all of humanity, in this moment, he felt the weight of that responsibility. We would be honored to journey with you, he said simply. Not as teachers or students, but as friends. When the feral fleet finally approached Earth 3 months later, they were met by a welcoming committee unlike any in human history. Ships from every nation rose to greet them. The first alien civilization to make contact with humanity had arrived not as conquerors or distant observers, but as friends saved from extinction. The horizon, patched together with a combination of human ingenuity and feral crystal technology, led the fleet into Earth orbit. On the bridge, Jack stood with Shinthal, watching the blue planet grow larger in the view screen. Your world is beautiful, the feral elder said, having learned enough human speech to communicate without Laura's help. So much water, so much life. It's yours to share, Jack replied, for as long as you need. The integration of the feral into human society began slowly. The aliens established their first settlement in the deserts of Australia, where the mineral content of the soil suited their crystalline biology. Human scientists worked with feral engineers to blend their technologies. Within a year, the first human feral space vessel was launched. a ship that combined the quantum flux drive with human adaptive systems. 5 years after the rescue, Jack visited the Farrell settlement. The crystal structures of their buildings caught the desert sunlight, sending rainbows dancing across the landscape. Children of both species played together in specially designed parks, human laughter mixing with the musical tones of young Farrell. Jack found Shinthal in a garden where crystal formations grew alongside earth plants. The Elder's form had changed over the years, adapting to Earth's environment in ways no one had predicted. Small facets of his crystalline body now reflected green and blue, the colors of his new home. "Commander Wilson," Shinthal greeted him, his voice a blend of light patterns and spoken words. "You honor us with your presence." "Just Jack now," he reminded the alien. "I retired from the Space Command last year. Yet you will always be the commander to us, the one who taught the Farrell to embrace uncertainty." They walked together through the garden, an aging human and an ancient crystal being who had crossed the stars to find each other. "We received a transmission yesterday," Shinthal said after a comfortable silence, "from a system near where we were trapped, another species in trouble, their world dying as ours once did." Jack looked up at his friend. "And?" Shinthal's body pulsed with what Jack now recognized as pride. "A Farrell human ship has already volunteered to answer their call. Captain Rodriguez leaves tomorrow." Jack smiled at the mention of Sophia. She had taken to space again as soon as her injuries from the neutron star incident had healed. Now she would lead the first joint mission to save another civilization. "They're calling it Operation Lighthouse," Shinthal continued. "A human term, I believe." "It means a beacon of hope in the darkness," Jack explained. "Something that guides those who are lost safely to shore." The Farrell Elder's lights dimmed thoughtfully. "When we sent our distress call across the stars, we never imagined how completely you would change us. We were a dying people, clinging to the past. Now we look to the future." The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the desert. In the distance, a new ship rose from the joint human-Farrell spaceport, its hull a seamless blend of metal and crystal. It climbed steadily upward until it was just a point of light among the emerging stars. "We called to you in our darkest hour," Shinthal said softly. "Now we answer the call together." Jack watched the ship until it vanished from sight, carrying the best of both species outward to the stars. The Farrell had sought out humans because they needed their chaotic creativity to survive. What neither species had expected was how much humans needed the Farrell in return: their perspective, their technology, and most of all, their friendship. 2. Civilizations, each incomplete on their own, had found in each other the missing pieces they never knew they lacked. And together, they reached toward the stars not as conquerors or explorers, but as rescuers, ready to extend a hand to others in need. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but the story was just beginning.